What's up, guys? Brady Fugel here, coming at you with another discography ranking, and it is time to talk about the one and only Deftones. This is a discography ranking that I've been looking forward to doing, but also kind of dreading doing at the same time, because Deftones' music is very, very dense, it's very nuanced, and they have 9 albums. So as opposed to that 3 Days Grace discography ranking that I uploaded a few days ago, where I said it was like the easiest one I've ever done, this one was probably the hardest. Just because of all the re-listening and focusing on the music that I've had to do. But at least I can also say that as far as like average scores that I'm going to give all of these albums, this is probably the highest scored discography ranking I have done so far, because there really isn't a Deftones album that I think is bad or even below average. I love all of their albums, honestly. And I think it's because Deftones' sound is just so unique. There's really no other band like them. So if you find yourself liking any Deftones album for the most part, then there probably won't be any other albums that you at least think are straight up bad. I find that with Deftones fans, a lot of times there's favorites, and then there's albums that maybe just don't resonate as much, but still aren't bad. But because this is such a long ranking and these songs and albums are so nuanced, I will switch up the format a little bit, just in a sense that if I did full deep dives into all these albums, this would end up being like a fucking half an hour video. So I'm just going to kind of say a few overarching thoughts, what I like, what I maybe don't like about these albums. I'm going to give my top 3 favorite tracks and any like main least favorite track that I have. I feel justified doing it this way because then it opens up the comments section for a lot more discussion and debate. If anybody else has questions about my opinion or wants to give their own opinion, there's a lot of opportunity for that and a lot of questions that may be left unanswered. And honestly, probably every album from 6 up to the number 1 album, I could see myself doing full-length favorite albums videos on. So I very well could expand upon these records in the future, in future videos. But for now, let's get straight into this ranking with my least favorite album, taking up the number 9 spot. I'm going to give to the self-titled in 2003. I think the best way I can describe this record and why it's my least favorite is that to me, it's their safest album. Like every record on this list, this album is unmistakably Deftones. But to me, not only did they not venture out as much with this record, but the songs themselves, despite being obviously that signature sound, they don't have as much of an emotional impact as pretty much every album ranked above it. And at times it almost sounds a bit uninspired. Like, there's songs like Lucky You, for example, where it's pretty much fully electronic based, at least. And the song overall kind of ends up dragging. There's a lot less dynamics. There isn't as much like profound, prominent emotion. There's also overall songs like Anniversary of an Uninteresting Event and also Needles and Pins that might have some cool moments here and there, but they're just really, really straightforward, bare-bones style Deftones. This album to me is like a textbook, non-essential release, if that makes sense. This is probably the album that I would recommend the least to any new fans, because some other albums that are a bit heavier or more melodic, more spacey, like I'll talk about eventually, those records I could see myself, even if they're not as high up on the list, at least recommending to somebody based on if they would like that sound. Versus this album, it doesn't really have that pull factor either way. It's kind of just there. That's the best way of putting it. But it's not bad. Top 3 tracks I'm going to give to Hexagram, Battle Axe, and Blood Cape. And my least favorite track, like I mentioned, is Lucky You, just because I think it drags a little bit too much. At the number 8 spot, I'm giving to Saturday Night Wrist, the follow-up to the self-titled. This came out in 2006. Now, with this album, I have to kind of flip the script, because this one is a lot more experimental and was some bold new territory for the band at this point in their career. But for my money, there's a lot of it that doesn't really pan out that well for them. Most notably the track Pink Cell Phone, which has these like almost sampled spoken word sections that maybe sound like they were from a cell phone. I'm not really big on that, and also the song being predominantly electronic influenced takes away a bit from at least what I would come to Deftones' music for. The track Mine does have some cool dissonance to it, but overall I find it to be a bit forgettable. And then the track Riviere tries to go for more of that spacey emotional sound, but to me the emotions don't really hit. The heavier tracks like Rapture and Rats, Rats, Rats go for more of like a frantic feeling, and as a result, they don't really come off as memorable as other heavier tracks in their catalog that are a bit more like riff-focused and place more of an emphasis on groove. I like the experimentation on this record, which is why it takes place over the self-titled. But to me, again, it's not really an essential release, and I feel like a lot of the ideas on Saturday Night Wrist will be done a lot better by future releases. Top 3 tracks, I'll say Beware. I actually really love that track. It has that really entrancing mood, and even though it is long, it doesn't feel long, if that makes sense. Obviously, Cherry Waves has some great melodies, and the closer, Drive. Least favorite, Pink Cell Phone. Number 7, and this is where I'm probably going to lose a lot of people, but just hear me out, I will explain. White Pony. Yeah, I know a lot of you are probably triggered right now, but it's a little different for me because I didn't grow up on Deftones' music. I got into them shortly before Gore was released, which is still almost 10 years at this point. But as a result, I don't really have a nostalgic attachment to White Pony and some of those older records like a lot of you who may be watching do. This is a record that I had to go back and actually find on my own and explore it. And I've been familiar with it for years now, but to me, there's some really great stuff on here, don't get me wrong, and I understand the how iconic this record is. I mean, for its time period especially, like it was a super important album, but for me personally, it doesn't resonate quite as much as other albums do from their discography. Like the opener, Back to School, I'm sorry, that song's kind of cheesy. Like, some of you may hate me for saying that, but I mean, Chino's rappy cadences in the verses like gave me like POD vibes in a way. The chorus, for my taste, is a little bit overly angsty, if that makes sense. But there's still a lot to love on here, don't get me wrong. I still think this is a good record. Like, I mean, RX Queen with its techie drums and that moody bass line running through it is awesome. There's obviously the fan favorite track Passenger that I love that features Maynard from Tool. He brings a very interesting kind of dual vocal dynamic in with Chino. Digital Bath is amazing. Obviously, Changing the House of Flies, their most iconic song ever, is great. It's an absolutely chilling song. Deftones is a band where even like their biggest songs are like, you can kind of see why they're Deftones' biggest songs. You got straight ahead alt metal, very well executed alt metal on songs like Streetcar and the moodier track Knife Party, both of which I also enjoy. And I think this album ends on a really good note, just in the kind of sequence of final tracks. I mean, obviously Passenger and Change on the House of Flies, and then the closing track, Pink Maggot, even though it uses a lot of the same ideas as Back to School, I think they're just used a lot better on this song. So yeah, top 3 tracks, Digital Bath, Pink Maggot, and RX Queen. My least favorite I'm going to give to Back to School. Number 6, continuing the rage baiting for a lot of Deftones' older fans, I'm giving to Around the Fur from 97. Again, iconic album, the album that pretty much established Deftones' sound for what it is. Songs like My Own Summer, Chorus, and Be Quiet and Drive, 2 of Deftones' most iconic songs ever. Again, you can really see why they are so loved and so famous in Deftones' catalog. They're great songs. The closer, MX, is a great deep cut. It's got this really mean vibe to it, even in kind of its quiet parts. I think that goes really well with that main riff that does have that kind of element of meanness to it. I love how the band embraces odd time signatures in a song like Ricketts. It's one of those songs that uses odd timing in a way that doesn't feel jolting or off-putting. You really barely even notice it. And that song, much like My Own Summer, has just this vicious chorus that sees Chino's, maybe even still to this date, best pulled off aggressive vocals and constant screams. Another personal favorite I have from this album is the track Mascara. Again, kind of like RX Queen, it's driven by this really moody bass line. And overall, it's a quieter song, but it's that song that brings that element of like uneasiness, and I enjoy feeling that as a listener. Top 3 tracks, My Own Summer, Mascara, Be Quiet and Drive. My least favorite I'm going to give to Head Up, just because it doesn't really bring a whole lot of uniqueness to this album, I suppose. It's more just like a straight-ahead nu metal style song, which is fine. It doesn't do a whole lot for me, but I just feel like it's somewhat of a filler track on this album. If you like nu metal, you probably disagree, but that's just how it is for me. Number 5, an album I was surprised was this high up, the debut, Adrenaline. This was the record that I had to get the most familiar with before this review, because I didn't listen to it a whole lot until I started preparing for this review. But, I mean, the riffing on here is awesome. Like, in Deftones' entire discography, these might be the most memorable riffs as far as actual the whole album. Like, I'm talking every song. I mean, Bored, the intro track, and Lifter also, just those riffs are just so chunky and groovy. They really register with you, and they make you want to come back to the song. And those aren't the only examples. Minus Blindfold is an awesome track that embraces a bit more dissonance, and again has some cool, just sick riffing. 1 Week right after it is awesome too. It embraces a lot of rhythmic syncopation, which is great. It's just a song that makes you want to keep moving. I'll also shout out Root as well as Engine Number 9 for just being really, really catchy songs yet again. This album is really hooky. It's maybe Deftones' heaviest album to date, and it also embraces quite a bit of like hardcore punk, which I didn't really expect to hear much of, but it very much is like a straight ahead, like early alt metal record, with some new metal influence, of course, but with some pretty prominent hardcore influence, especially in the guitars. Top 3 tracks I'm going to give to Minus Blindfold, For Real, I don't know how to pronounce it, Fi Real, really cool moody track with, again, some odd time signatures that I enjoy, and 1 Week. And the least favorite I'm going to give to Fist, the closer. It's fine, it's just a little bit messy and incohesive. The vocals don't kick in until like over halfway through. I don't know, this song just kind of didn't do a whole lot for me. It kind of lets the album fizzle out in a way. So as we move into the top 4, you might have already deduced that Deftones' 4 most recent albums they comprise my top 4 favorite albums in the Deftones discography. And I think there's many reasons why new Deftones resonates with me a little bit more. There's probably is an element of just me being a relatively new fan. I mean, it's still been almost 10 years, but compared to, fans who discovered them in the 90s, like, that is still relatively new. I do understand that. And I think a lot of it has to do with just that I enjoy overall Deftones' more melodic, more emotionally weighty side as opposed to their heavier new metal and alternative metal style that they really employed well in the 90s and the early 2000s. I also like the cleaner production, and I just think these albums are a little bit more well-rounded in a way. So moving up to number 4, I'm going to give it to the band's most recent album, Ohms, from 2020. Maybe the band's heaviest album since either White Pony or the self-titled. It did bring it back, a lot of those alt metal elements. But, this is still an awesome fucking album. Like, there's some killer songs on here. I think the other 3 albums beat it out because those albums are a little bit just more emotionally weighty, but there's still a track on here like Pompeii, which has some really just gorgeous spacey melodies that I enjoy. Radiant City might be my favorite song on here. That's a song that's just so, groovy and still pretty heavy, but, the band still managed to retain a lot of, mood and atmosphere despite that. Also, Arancho with that really chunky, almost thrashy riff that drives the song. Again, just some really great dynamics between the heavy parts and the melodic parts. And in that song, I think Chino's vocals in particular kind of have the best duality out of every other song on this album. Ceremony is a really catchy mid-tempo song on here, track 2. Headless is a great deep cut. It has this murky, churning vibe to it the whole time that gives me somewhat of a Tool vibe a little bit. You, of course, have the sludgy intro track Genesis, which just has this, lumbering pace to it that I find really infectious. Ohms, the title track, of course, has that really infectious lead guitar line. So not as emotionally profound as the top 3 records are for me, but a great album that, to me, encompasses a lot of different elements of Deftones' sound in one, which was great to hear, 25 years into their career. Radiant City, Headless, and the title track, Ohms. Number 3 is Gore, the album that got me into the band. A very divisive album for most Deftones fans, but like I said earlier, I like when Deftones leans a bit more on the spacey, shoegazy, atmospheric side, and this album maybe does that the most, with maybe one other album for contention that I'll obviously talk about. But right away from the opener, Prayers Triangles, with its really atmospheric and spacious sounding clean guitars in the background that just beautifully echo and chime under Chino's really delicate vocals, that very much sets the pace for the entire record. This album also has some great choruses overall. Like I said, Prayers Triangles is a great one. Phantom Bride is a beautiful song. Also Xenon. The band still does go heavy on a few songs, like Doomed User, which has this really explosive intro that I like. Acid Hologram is an awesome track on here that very much was a grower for me personally. With its slower pace, you might be turned off about it at first, but when you really let this song grow on you and you let yourself sink into it, it becomes one of the most memorable tracks on here, just because those riffs, as doom metal influences they are, they have this like slow-paced groove to them that I find really infectious. LMIRL has this really cool like jazzy vibe to it that I love, and my favorite track without a doubt is Heart's Wires. I think this might be either my first or second most streamed Deftones song ever. I just love the guitar interplay in those verses, just how you have those like really dramatic but delicate sounding clean guitars over that kind of pace setting laid back rhythm guitar that's a bit more distorted. That part is like ear candy to me, and again it just has this knockout chorus. Top 3 tracks I'm going to give to Acid Hologram, Heart's Wires, and LMIRL. Now, number 2, I'm going to give to Diamond Eyes. I absolutely love this album. I mean, I love all the recent albums I talked about, but I mean, this album is something special. Right away from the title track, one of Deftones' easily best songs ever. It's a song that is just so straight to the point, but it executes all these different emotions so beautiful. I mean, that chorus is amazing. You get the simple but effective chugging riff in the verses. As opposed to what I said about the self-titled being the album that I probably would never recommend to anyone trying to get into the band, I think Diamond Eyes is the first song I would show someone if they were curious about Deftones. And that would be like the real test of not only where they would go from there, which album, but if they can get into the album. If they can get into this song, I think they could get into the band. This album is definitely a bit more of a melodic detour as far as their catalog as a whole. Like you have tracks like obviously the murky and promiscuous track You've Seen the Butcher, which is a fan favorite. Several other songs on here like Beauty School and Risk and 976 Evil, which is a great deep cut. Just again have some gorgeous melodies that even when the songs get heavier at parts, they come back, and it comes full circle so perfectly with these tracks. And obviously the track Sex Tape is one of their most well-known tracks for good reason. This is just an absolutely impassioned, and I keep using the same adjectives I feel like, but just again, gorgeous, beautiful song. But the album still has its heavy moments. I mean, Royal is, again, kind of like Doomed User on Gore. It's a song that just comes right out of the gates with a really explosive intro riff. Also, Command Control brings in some subtle nu metal elements a little bit just in Chino's vocal cadences. For my money, this is the album that honestly perfects Deftones' more emotional and moody side of their discography and their melodic side. Because up until this point, it had kind of been lacking a little bit on the past records, for me at least, but here they just absolutely master it. Top 3 tracks I'm going to give to the title track Diamond Eyes, Sex Tape, and 976 Evil. And now we have it, my favorite Deftones album, Koino Yokoon in 2012. Very simply, the reason I love this album so much is because of just how it fully embraces atmosphere and ambiance and just pure, like, passionate emotion. This may be controversial, but I think this is, like, Deftones' most inspired album, maybe, like, probably ever, honestly. Some of you may disagree, that's fine. That's just what I think based on what I'm hearing. It does chop off a lot of the metal in favor of a sound that overall is maybe just straight up space rock, or maybe alternative rock would be a good label for it. Obviously, you still have the groovy intro track Swerve City, which is just infectiously catchy, and a track like Poltergeist does still have a lot of those like just nasty down-tuned riffs. But tracks like Graphic Nature and Gauze that really embrace like that kind of thin, dissonant style of riffing, especially in the verses, that's just straightforward space rock to my ears. I just feel like every song on here is just so like entrancing and beautiful. This is an album that I could just put on front to back and get lost in every time. But I, of course, have to single out my 2 favorite Deftones songs, period. Maybe Heart's Wires would be the contention, but easily those are my top 3. Entombed, absolutely fucking beautiful song. It says a lot that the song can pretty much use that in that same clean guitar melody literally the entire time, or almost the entire time, and it never feels like it's getting old. I love the kind of like synthy, almost 80s sounding clean guitar flourishes that strum throughout. Chino's vocals on the song are just absolutely masterful, whether it's his delicate, tender vocals in the verses or his powerful belts in the chorus. And of course, my favorite Deftones song, period, is Rosemary. Of course, you got the spacey intro. This song is just breathtaking. Like, I almost don't even have the words to describe it. I'd probably say it's a top 10 song, period, for me. Whether it's that moody main riff or that absolutely massive, layered, synthy post-chorus section, or the jolting, oddly timed breakdown at the end. This song to me is Deftones at their absolute sonic and stylistic peak, which very much follows suit in the album for me. Top 3 tracks: Rosemary, Entombed, and Romantic Dreams, which has this really cool, like, moody, promiscuous vibe to it. And that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to please hit the subscribe button because I will be reviewing Private Music after it drops this Friday. So stay tuned to see what I score it and where it will rank on this list. And please, if you're a Deftones fan, comment below how you would rank their albums or what your favorite or least favorite albums are, what your favorite songs are. I would love to discuss this band's music further as much as possible. I feel like among Deftones fans, like, every single possible combination of albums ranked, like, exists in somebody, just among all the fans. Yeah, let me know what you think of mine, and until next time, once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.